Dedication. To those who stood by me with unwavering support and encouragement, even when the path was uncertain, your loyalty and belief in me have been my greatest strength. You know who you are, and I am eternally grateful. And to those who doubted, mocked, or underestimated my journey, thank you. Your skepticism fueled my determination. You too know who you are. Enjoy the book. Title: Shadows of the Beyond. Authored by Christopher Archer. Narrated by Carl Johnson. Shadows of the Beyond. Chapter 1. Echoes in the Darkness. The bitter cold bit into Tom's skin as he trudged through the snow-dusted forest, his breath visible in quick puffs under the cloud-covered moonlight. Branches cracked underfoot, the silence of the woods pressing in on him. He had driven hours into the wilderness, following the coordinates from the cryptic message that had been slipped under his door weeks earlier. No signature, no explanation, just a string of numbers and the chilling instruction. Not all shadows fade in the light. Tom knew he was walking into a trap, or worse. But the haunting discoveries of Project New Dawn had left him no choice. If there was more to the conspiracy than what he'd already unearthed, he had to find it. Adjusting the strap on his backpack, he let his eyes sweep across the area ahead. His flashlight was tucked away for now. He couldn't risk the beam giving away his position. At last, he reached the edge of a clearing. Through the dense trees, Tom caught sight of what appeared to be an abandoned facility, its crumbling concrete walls half buried in snow. Barbed wire curled along the perimeter, rusty but formidable, with large warning signs slapped on nearly every surface. Restricted area, government property, trespassers will be prosecuted. But he knew better. This was no standard government site. Staying low, he moved closer to the perimeter fence. From this angle, he could make out more of the facility, barely visible beyond the razor wire fencing. His heart beat faster as he spotted something strange and out of place. A subtle glow pulsing from an opening near the far side of the structure, like the soft hum of hidden machinery. It wasn't the dim yellow light of old electric bulbs. It was a pale bluish light, almost otherworldly. Tom circled the fence, searching for an entry point. The air grew colder as he moved closer to the strange light, and he fought to steady his breath. This was it. The moment where he would decide if he really wanted to know what lay within this ghostly base. He squeezed through a gap in the fence, ducking low to avoid the barbed wire as it snagged his coat. His boots crunched on the icy ground as he moved closer to the facility walls. A distant mechanical sound rumbled from inside, like the hum of machinery winding up or a generator working overtime. Tom's senses were on high alert. He knew that if anyone saw him now, he'd be as good as dead. Project New Dawn had cost him nearly everything, but this, whatever this was, felt different. The weight of it pressed down on him with each step. Rounding a corner, he nearly stumbled over a low tarp stretched across something massive, its edges rippling in the cold wind. He knelt down, pulling back the tarp ever so slightly, and froze. Beneath it, a sleek metallic structure gleamed in the faint light. Its surface was smooth, unmarred by rust or grime, and shone with an iridescent shimmer he'd never seen on any kind of man-made metal. The hairs on his arms stood on end as he took in the form beneath the tarp. A streamlined, curving shape, like the body of an aircraft. But the design was all wrong. There were no wings, no visible engines, nothing familiar. A low hum emitted from somewhere deeper within the structure, vibrating through the ground beneath him. The sound resonated in his chest, cold and unfamiliar, like a living thing lying dormant. Whatever this was, it wasn't made on Earth. Not by any standard he knew. He had just glimpsed the edge of something that defied explanation. A secret hidden here in this desolate place, protected by layers of government secrecy and deception. Suddenly, the snap of footsteps broke the silence, and his instincts screamed at him to move. He dropped the tarp back in place and darted into the shadows. Through the thin undergrowth, he caught sight of two figures patrolling with flashlights, their voices muffled by the thick, cold air. His heart thundered as he ducked lower, slipping behind a snow-covered tree just as the beams of light swept over where he had been standing moments before. The guards passed, their murmurs lost to the distance, but Tom knew his time here was up. Staying any longer would be suicide. As he slipped back toward the perimeter fence, his mind raced, replaying the brief, breathtaking sight beneath the tarp. He knew it in his gut. Whatever he'd just seen, it wasn't the relic of some old military project. This was something else. Something that would make Project New Dawn look like child's play. As he reached the safety of the forest, he allowed himself one last look back at the hidden base, its unearthly glow still flickering faintly against the cold night sky. His heart was still racing as he began his trek back to the car, his head spinning with questions. Whatever lay hidden here was unlike anything he had ever seen, something that could reshape everything he thought he knew. Chapter 2. Gathering the team again. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a pale, cold light over Tom's living room. He had barely slept, the images of that gleaming structure and its impossible hum replaying in his mind like a fever dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was the tip of something deeper, something that had existed just outside the public's perception, carefully hidden by layers of secrecy. Sitting on the edge of his worn-out sofa, Tom thumbed through his phone, gathering his courage before making the calls. He couldn't do this alone. He wasn't even sure what this was, but he knew that only one group of people would believe him. Riley answered first, his voice gravelly and cautious. "Tom, it's early. What's going on?" "You remember Project New Dawn?" Tom asked. There was a pause. "I remember it too well. Don't tell me you found something worse." Tom hesitated. "I think I have, but it's different." He recounted what he'd seen, the hidden facility, the strange metallic structure, and the hum that resonated with something primal. He didn't use the word alien. Not yet. He wanted Riley's analytical mind on this, not his disbelief. Riley was silent for a long moment. "I'd heard rumors back in the day. They called it Operation Celestial Veil. No one knew much, just whispers on black site channels. But they were serious about keeping it hidden, Tom. You don't dig into Celestial Veil without attracting a whole lot of heat." Tom's stomach tightened. "Then I need you here to help. I can't do this without you, Riley." Riley sighed. "All right, but if we're going back down this rabbit hole, we need Nina and Marcus. We can't afford any mistakes this time." They quickly contacted the others, each call tinged with urgency. Nina was on board without hesitation, her voice laced with determination. "The last time we took them on, I saw friends and neighbors turned into mindless followers of a hidden agenda. If this is the next chapter, we need to end it." Marcus was a harder sell, though not because he didn't believe them. He'd grown wary since his near escape, the memories of a raid on his home still haunting him. "Tom, I've spent years poking around government servers and pulling at their threads, but this... Are we sure this isn't too far? We barely made it out last time." "I know, Marcus, but you know what they're capable of. If this is connected to New Dawn, we can't ignore it. And if there's even a chance it's something beyond that, something extraterrestrial..." Tom trailed off, not wanting to voice the terrifying possibility. "Fine," Marcus said finally, his voice steady. "But this time we do it smart. If this thing is tied to Celestial Veil, we're up against military-grade encryption, surveillance, things I don't even know how to handle." "Which is exactly why we need you," Tom replied. "I don't think this is like anything we've encountered. Whatever they're hiding, it's huge. And if we don't expose it, no one will." By the end of the day, the four of them were crammed into Tom's living room, their faces serious, but a spark of determination glinting in their eyes. The feeling was almost nostalgic, a reunion of old allies, each battered but unbroken, united by their shared purpose. Riley set a map on the table, marking the coordinates Tom had followed. These are the last known locations associated with Celestial Vale. According to my contacts, this facility is one of many. They're scattered across remote areas, forests, deserts, mountains, any place where access is limited and visibility is low. It's like they're preparing for something, but they're keeping it under wraps even within the intelligence community. "What about the base I saw?" Tom asked. "Could that be the central hub?" Riley nodded slowly. "Possibly. The fact that you saw something like a spacecraft means this base might be more than just a storage facility. It's an active site. If we're going in, we need to do it with extreme caution." Nina, seated across from them, leaned forward. "And once we're inside, how do we even know what we're looking for?" Marcus pulled out his laptop, fingers flying over the keys. "I might be able to help there. I hacked into an old government satellite feed this morning and found something interesting." He turned the screen to the group, revealing a grainy, high-resolution image of the facility. "See this?" He pointed to a series of strange markings on the ground surrounding the base. "It's some kind of electromagnetic interference. Regular satellite imaging can't see through it, but these patterns are not natural. They're blocking signals." Tom's eyes narrowed. "You think they're hiding something underground?" Marcus nodded. "They don't want anyone, satellites, drones, anyone, seeing what's in there. And whatever they're hiding, it's powerful enough to create those interference fields." The team exchanged a weighted glance. The implications were staggering. "So we're really doing this," Nina said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're going into the heart of it." "Yeah," Riley replied, his tone grim but resolute. "And if we're right, we're facing more than just a cover-up. This is the kind of secret that people die to protect. We'll have to use every skill we've got." They spent the rest of the day planning meticulously, each one contributing their unique knowledge. Riley listed former CIA protocols that might be in place to protect the facility, while Marcus worked on ways to disable surveillance systems remotely. Nina shared the quiet techniques she'd seen in government cleanup operations that could help them stay under the radar. Before they dispersed, Tom looked around at his friends, their faces set with resolve. This was the closest they had come to unraveling a mystery that had haunted each of them for too long. A mystery that could change everything they knew about the world, and perhaps even about humanity itself. As they said their goodbyes for the night, Tom couldn't shake the weight of it all. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying the low hum, the strange structure under the tarp, the stark realization that they were moving into the unknown. In his heart, he knew they weren't just fighting to uncover a conspiracy. They were facing something greater, something that might change the course of history, and maybe it was something not of this earth. Chapter 3. Into the Depths. Infiltrating the Base. The night was silent, save for the soft crunch of snow underfoot as the team approached the facility. Tucked away in a remote stretch of wilderness, the underground base seemed almost dormant, a sleeping giant lying under the earth. But they knew better. Here, in the shadows of this forgotten outpost, secrets lurked that could shake the foundation of everything they knew. Riley led the way, his experience with covert operations invaluable. They moved as a single unit, each with their role honed and ready. Marcus carried a compact tablet, his fingers moving with deft precision as he hacked into the facility's security system, disabling cameras, unlocking doors, and keeping their movements hidden. "Surveillance is down for 60 seconds, Marcus whispered, glancing up from his tablet. "That's all the time we've got before they notice a blip in the system. Move." Tom, Riley, Nina, and Marcus slipped through a side entrance, past heavy concrete walls, and into a maze of steel corridors. Each footstep echoed in the hollow silence, punctuated only by the low hum of machinery humming beneath the floor. This was it, the heart of the facility. They worked their way deeper, using Nina's sharp sense of direction to navigate the labyrinthine halls. A few turns later, they reached a large storage room, filled with crates and strange equipment that looked far from earthly. Curious symbols were etched into the metal cases, spirals, geometric shapes, and lines that seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. Tom paused, his fingers grazing one of the symbols. He felt a jolt, like static electricity. These markings, they feel like some kind of language, he murmured, half to himself. "Don't touch anything," Riley hissed, pulling him back. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The team pressed on, reaching a series of massive steel doors reinforced with complex locks. "There's something big behind these," Nina whispered, eyeing the doors warily. Marcus began working on the control panel, his fingers moving faster than ever. "These security measures aren't standard. Whoever's in charge here doesn't want anyone getting inside." After a tense minute, a soft click signaled that the locks had been bypassed. The door creaked open, revealing a vast, dimly lit chamber beyond. The group stepped in, and what they saw took their breath away. Rows upon rows of technological marvels filled the chamber, devices that looked like something out of science fiction. Some hovered in mid-air, emitting soft pulses of light. Others looked almost biological, with organic forms that defied logic and physics. The walls were adorned with more of those strange symbols, and large consoles lined the room, each bearing screens with data streams in an unfamiliar language. What is this?" Nina whispered, her voice awestruck. It was as though they'd stepped into another world. And then, in the distance, they saw them. The holding cells. Encased within thick glass walls stood various beings, each unlike anything they had ever seen. The creatures ranged from tall, slender beings with alabaster skin, nearly luminescent under the artificial lights, to smaller, insect-like entities with sharp, segmented limbs and black, unblinking eyes. Some of the cells held beings that appeared humanoid, their features eerily close to human, yet subtly wrong. Their eyes too large, their limbs slightly too long, an unsettling air of the alien in their every feature. Tom felt a chill crawl up his spine. These weren't just stories or shadows. They were real, breathing beings, and they were being held captive. Suddenly Marcus spoke in a hushed voice, his gaze fixed on a sleek, dormant ship, partially visible through a glass wall on the far side of the room. "Tom, look at that." It was unlike any vehicle they'd ever seen. The spacecraft was massive, metallic, its surface almost mirror-like, reflecting distorted images of the room around it. The edges were smooth, flawless, with no visible seams or rivets, as though it had been crafted from a single, perfect piece of metal. Alien symbols adorned its hull, etched with a precision that defied human craftsmanship. The ship's design was both beautiful and terrifying, alien, yet familiar. Tom approached, mesmerized. The ship radiated a quiet power, a hum that he could feel vibrating through the floor, through his bones. It felt as if the ship itself were alive, waiting. A sudden alarm blared through the facility, snapping him back to reality. Marcus cursed, his tablet flickering with red alerts. "Damn it! They're onto us! We need to move!" In the confusion, they became separated. Tom, pulled by some primal instinct, found himself straying from the others, his footsteps leading him to the holding cells. As he neared, he saw one of the beings within looking straight at him, its dark eyes piercing and wise. He could feel something, a faint sense of understanding, as if it were trying to communicate with him. Before he could react, Riley appeared, grabbing his arm. "Tom, We've got to go. Now. They regrouped in the central chamber, Marcus panting as he showed them a small zip drive he'd grabbed from one of the consoles. I managed to download some data from their systems. It looks like descriptions of the alien species and their ships. Good work, but we're out of time, Riley snapped, scanning the door. They'll be here any second. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the room. A distorted, robotic voice issuing from the intercom. Intruders detected. Prepare for neutralization. A team of guards poured into the room, heavily armed, their faces concealed by helmets. In an instant, gunfire erupted, shattering glass, ricocheting off alien machinery. The team dodged, ducking behind the alien consoles as bullets tore through the air. Riley fired back, his shots calculated, keeping the guards at bay. Marcus scrambled to finish copying data, while Nina worked to find them an exit. Over here! Nina yelled, spotting a side door that led to a maintenance corridor. They sprinted through the door, alarms blaring, the guards hot on their heels. The narrow passage twisted and turned, until finally they burst through an emergency exit, spilling out into the cold night air. Breathless, they scrambled for cover among the trees, ducking down as more guards emerged from the facility, scanning the forest. Once they were a safe distance away, they regrouped, each member processing what they had just seen. The technology, the containment cells, the ship, the beings. None of them spoke, the weight of the truth they had just uncovered pressing down on them. After a few moments, Marcus finally broke the silence, holding up the zip drive he had taken. This holds the descriptions of everything in there. The alien types, the ships, everything they're hiding. Tom nodded, his face grim. We have to tell people. This isn't just a cover-up. This is a truth that changes everything. They looked at each other, the enormity of what lay ahead sinking in. This was just the beginning. The first step into a battle they could barely comprehend. But they had no choice. The truth was out there, and now it was their duty to bring it to light. As they disappeared into the forest, leaving the facility and its dark secrets behind, each one of them knew they could never go back. Chapter 4. The Zip Drive, Uncovering Alien Intel. The fire crackled softly, casting shadows on the team as they huddled in their makeshift hideout deep within the forest. Marcus sat in front of his laptop, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the screen. The zip drive, the one they had risked everything to retrieve, was plugged in, and the files were slowly decrypting. Each of them knew that the moment that drive opened, there was no going back. With a final beep, the screen displayed a folder labeled Operation Celestial Veil, Classified. The team leaned in. A collective breath held as Marcus opened the first document. It was like opening a door to another universe, one shrouded in secrets humans were never meant to see. Discovering the alien intel. Marcus scanned through file after file, skimming through the contents with a growing look of disbelief. These files are comprehensive, he whispered almost reverently. The documents weren't just scraps or reports. They were organized, meticulously documented files that outlined an alien presence on Earth in excruciating detail, with specific instructions for interactions, containment protocols, and ship classifications. These aren't just reports on sightings or meetings, Marcus said, shaking his head. This is an actual archive. Whoever compiled this had access to classified information at the highest level. He opened the first folder, labeled Species Classifications. Species Type A, the Ambassadors. The first file contained images of tall, slender beings with elongated limbs and large, dark eyes. They were labeled as Species Type A and referred to as the Ambassadors. Marcus began to read the file aloud, his voice low and tense. Species A, Ambassadors. Height, approximately 7-9 feet. Physiology: slender, pale skin, elongated limbs, large, pupilless black eyes capable of seeing in multiple spectrums. Abilities: advanced cognitive abilities, highly empathic and intelligent, sensitive to human emotions. Purpose: primary communicators with human authorities. Reports indicate they are capable of telepathic communication with select humans. Nina frowned, taking in the image on the screen. The ambassadors had an eerie calmness about them, an almost disconcerting serenity. So, they've been talking to these things, she muttered. Our leaders, the government. They've been holding conversations with creatures from another world, maybe even making deals. Riley crossed his arms, jaw set as he stared at the screen. It would explain a lot. The technological advancements, sudden bursts of innovation out of nowhere. They've been working with them. Who knows what they've given us, or what we've traded in return? Marcus clicked through the next folder. The files continued, detailing another species. Species Type B, the spies. The screen flickered, displaying an image of a much smaller, more sinister creature. These aliens were insect-like, with sleek, segmented bodies and compound eyes that glinted with an unnatural intelligence. They were labeled as Species Type B. Species B, the spies. Height, approximately 2 to 3 feet. Physiology, insect-like exoskeletal structure, chameleon-like skin capable of color adaptation. Abilities: undetectable by normal human senses, excellent at camouflage and espionage, can infiltrate and blend into human environments. Purpose: used primarily for intelligence gathering, infiltration, and espionage. Known to be capable of mimicry to a limited degree. Marcus glanced up, his face pale. These things, they're designed to spy on us, to collect information without being detected. They could be anywhere. In our homes, our workplaces, watching everything we do. Tom exhaled sharply, and we'd never know it. We'd never even see them coming. The reality of it hit them all hard. It wasn't just the fact that these creatures existed. It was the understanding that they had been woven into the fabric of society without anyone realizing. There could be hundreds, thousands of them lurking in plain sight. Species Type C, the Guardians. The next file was, if anything, more intimidating. An image of a massive, imposing creature appeared on the screen. Muscular, towering, with tentacle-like appendages and a glistening, almost armor-like skin. These were classified as Species Type C. Species C, the Guardians. Height, approximately 10 to 12 feet. Physiology: muscular build, hardened exoskeleton, tentacle-like appendages capable of precise and powerful movements. Abilities: enhanced strength, extreme resilience to physical trauma. Purpose: serve as protectors and enforcers. Used primarily as guards in alien society and within human-alien collaborative facilities. Not inherently aggressive, but highly territorial. Nina shivered, the sight of the creature filling her with a cold dread. So, they're the enforcers, the muscle. Looks like it, Riley replied grimly. Probably here to keep everyone else in line, including us. They sat in silence, each of them coming to grips with the enormity of it. These weren't just aliens, they were a hierarchy, each with its own purpose, its own role within this shadowy alliance between humans and extraterrestrials, spaceship varieties. Marcus navigated to the next set of files, labeled Spaceship Varieties. There were multiple categories of ships, each with distinct functions and designs, tailored to their alien occupants. The first file was labeled Ambassador Shuttles. The image displayed a sleek, streamlined craft, shimmering with a metallic sheen and adorned with faint alien markings. According to the notes, these ships were reserved for diplomatic missions, transporting the ambassadors for meetings with human authorities. The next was the Interceptor craft, a small, agile ship used for reconnaissance and enforcement, capable of high speeds and evasive maneuvers. And then, as Marcus scrolled further, they saw an entry for something far larger. Harvester motherships. Purpose: interstellar travel, resource collection, and storage. Known to house hundreds of life forms and advanced technology for research and observation. Capable of creating its own gravitational field and traveling long distances through space without the need for recharging. Harvester motherships, Marcus read aloud, his voice barely a whisper. These things aren't just ships. They're entire ecosystems, floating cities. They can travel between stars, sustain life, conduct experiments. It's like they're entire worlds unto themselves. Tom leaned back, shaking his head in disbelief. They're not just visitors, are they? They're settlers. They're colonizing. And our leaders. They've let this happen. The weight of the files was crushing. They contained blueprints, diagrams, lists of frequencies, known weaknesses and strengths. This was no simple cover-up. This was a plan, meticulously crafted and executed over decades, perhaps even longer. The incident, a dangerous secret. Marcus opened the last folder, and his brows knitted in confusion. This file was labeled Incident Report, Protocol Redacted. Inside was a document marked with numerous redactions. The text was sparse, with entire paragraphs blacked out, but what remained was enough to paint a picture of something gone horribly wrong. Report date, classified subject, incident, communication disruption details, break in communication with Ambassador Class Species A, possible insubordination or independent mission activity detected, immediate containment procedures initiated to prevent exposure, all personnel instructed to adhere to blackout protocol. Tom frowned, leaning in closer. A break in communication? Does this mean the ambassador stopped cooperating? Riley read further, his voice tinged with apprehension. They didn't just stop cooperating. It sounds like they went rogue. The document hinted at an event that had shattered the delicate balance of the alliance. Something had happened. Something big enough that the ambassadors had withdrawn, and the shadow government had scrambled to cover it up. And they've kept this hidden from the public, Marcus said. Whoever sent us those coordinates wanted us to know this wasn't just a partnership. It's a ticking time bomb. They were silent, the gravity of the revelation settling over them like a heavy fog. This wasn't just about aliens or clandestine operations. This was a potential threat, one that was already unfolding, and that they were now caught in the middle of. Tom finally spoke, his voice filled with determination. We can't keep this to ourselves. The world has to know what's out there, what's happening. This isn't about Project New Dawn anymore. This is something much bigger. With the knowledge that their battle was only beginning, the team stared into the darkness beyond the glow of the laptop. The truth they had uncovered wasn't just a revelation. It was a call to action, and they would be ready. Chapter 5. The Alien Alliance Exposed. Tom's heart raced as they crept deeper into the base's winding corridors, feeling the weight of their discoveries like a constant pressure. Their steps echoed in the dimly lit hallways, and the unsettling alien symbols on the walls seemed to twist and pulse under the flickering lights. Tom's mind whirled with questions as he tried to make sense of the layers of conspiracy, secrecy, and deception they had unearthed. But suddenly, Riley signaled for them to stop. Footsteps sounded from around the corner, precise and unhurried. They had just enough time to duck into a nearby room, crouching in the shadows as the footsteps approached. A tall, stern-looking woman appeared, clipboard in hand and a lab coat flaring around her as she walked with purpose. Her face was partially obscured by the harsh shadows, but her posture and piercing gaze radiated authority. Marcus stiffened, recognition sparking in his eyes. "That's Dr. Alana Hayes," he whispered. "She was part of Project New Dawn, one of the scientists. I thought she vanished after the project was disbanded." The name rang a bell for Tom, too. Dr. Hayes had been involved in the early days of Project New Dawn, back when it was rumored to be a simple research project focused on scientific advancements. But she had disappeared without a trace, and rumors suggested she had taken her research underground. Literally. Riley's face hardened. She's in deep then. If she's here, she's got answers. And we need them. Before anyone could stop him, Tom moved out from their hiding spot, stepping directly into Dr. Hayes's path. "Dr. Hayes," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. The scientist froze, her eyes narrowing as they fell on Tom and the team behind him. She glanced around, assessing the situation with a calculating gaze, but something in her expression softened when her eyes returned to Tom. "Tom," she said, almost as if she'd been expecting him. "I figured you might show up eventually." Tom clenched his fists. "You know who I am?" "I know a lot about you," she replied, crossing her arms. "But the real question is, do you know what you've walked into?" "We know enough," he said, keeping his voice steady. "We know about the aliens, about the so-called ambassadors and the other species. We know the government has been working with them, and that this alliance is far from innocent." A faint smile crossed Dr. Hayes's lips. "Then you know half of the truth." She gestured for them to follow her. "But if you want the full story, you're going to need to see for yourselves." Into the core. Dr. Hayes led them down a series of twisting corridors, past rooms filled with advanced technology, containment cells, and alien artifacts. The atmosphere grew colder, and a strange hum vibrated through the walls, making Tom's skin prickle. Finally, she stopped in front of a door marked with alien symbols and entered a passcode, motioning for them to follow her inside. The room was vast, with screens lining every wall, each displaying data, charts and video feeds of alien ships docked in hangars, alongside maps marked with mysterious zones around the globe. At the far end of the room, a large viewing window overlooked a cavernous chamber filled with alien ships and containment cells. "Welcome to the core of Operation Celestial Veil," she said. "This is where our negotiations take place." Nina frowned, her eyes fixed on Dr. Hayes. "Negotiations? With aliens? What could we possibly have to offer them that they couldn't just take by force?" Dr. Hayes met Nina's gaze without flinching. "A valid question. But this is not a partnership of equals. We're little more than subjects to them. A resource." She walked over to a screen, pulling up a series of files. Images flashed across the screen. Scenes of alien beings overseeing humans who appeared to be undergoing medical tests, injections, and scans. There were faces filled with confusion and fear, all under the watchful gaze of the ambassadors and their insect-like counterparts. Tom felt his stomach twist. What are they doing to those people? "Experimenting," Dr. Hayes replied, her voice chillingly matter-of-fact. "To them, we are like any other test species. Earth is seen as a habitat testing ground, where they can study the effects of various biological agents on human physiology. They call it population optimization." A stunned silence fell over the group. The weight of her words hung in the air, suffocating. They're testing on us?" Marcus said, his voice a near whisper. "And the government just lets them?" Dr. Hayes turned to him, her face grim. "Not everyone in the government agrees, but powerful factions do. The ambassadors came with promises of technology, advancements that could change the world. But the cost was steep. Permission to test certain biological agents on our population under highly controlled conditions." Nina's face paled. "And all these illnesses that have appeared out of nowhere over the years." "Many of them were introduced," Dr. Hayes confirmed. "The ambassadors provided samples of pathogens they'd used on other worlds to optimize specific traits within populations. Some agents were designed to strengthen immune responses. Others had more sinister effects. The government agreed, believing that these were controlled, localized tests. But things quickly spiraled beyond their control. A personal revelation. Tom's mind was reeling. The knowledge that his own government had allowed people to be experimented on, that human lives had been traded for technological gains, filled him with a cold rage. But Dr. Hayes wasn't finished. "There's one other thing you should know, Tom," she said, her gaze softening. "Your brother was one of the early participants in these experiments." The room seemed to spin as Tom's knees nearly buckled. His brother. The memories came rushing back. His brother had disappeared during Project New Dawn's initial phases. It had always haunted him, an unsolved mystery that he'd never been able to let go of. And now he was learning that it hadn't been an accident or a fluke. It had been a calculated decision. "What happened to him?" Tom demanded, his voice raw with emotion. Dr. Hayes hesitated, genuine regret flashing in her eyes. "Your brother was part of a control group. They used him to monitor the effects of a mild genetic enhancer, one designed to strengthen human resilience. But the results were inconclusive, and they relocated the participants without warning." She pulled up another file on the screen. The image of his brother appeared, healthy, but his eyes haunted, distant. A note beside his profile read, "Displaced. No further monitoring." "No further monitoring?" Tom repeated, his voice barely more than a whisper. "You mean they just abandoned him?" "Exactly," Dr. Hayes said, her voice softer now. "Once they were done, he was considered expendable. He and countless others were left to fend for themselves, with no support, no resources, no idea of what had been done to them." A heavy silence filled the room as Tom struggled to process the information. Anger, sorrow, and guilt crashed over him in waves, and he clenched his fists, a fiery determination igniting within him. "This ends now," he said, his voice low and fierce. "These aliens, this alliance, whatever it takes, we're going to expose them." The dark purpose revealed. Dr. Hayes nodded. "I don't agree with what's been done here, and neither do many of us. But I stayed because I knew someone would eventually come for the truth. And the truth is, Tom, that the ambassadors have been planning something far bigger than any of us realized." She pulled up a final document, labeled Phase Omega. The file described a plan to expand the scope of their experiments, using Earth as a testing ground for potential colonization on a planetary scale. It was slated to begin in mere months, and their government handlers seemed resigned to it, too invested in the promised benefits to risk breaking the alliance. Tom's heart pounded as he scanned the document. They had to act fast, or the experiments would escalate beyond their control. His mind raced with strategies, the beginnings of a plan. Dr. Hayes placed a hand on his shoulder. "If you're truly ready to take them down, you'll need allies, both human and alien." Tom looked into her eyes and saw the resolve there, a willingness to make things right. For his brother, for those lost to this twisted alliance, and for the future of humanity. "Let's end this," he said, the fire in his voice burning brighter than ever. Chapter 6, Action-Packed Escape and Cat-and-Mouse Chase. The silence inside the alien base was punctured by the blaring of alarms and flashing red lights, casting a chaotic glow on the metallic walls. The team exchanged a quick, tense glance. They'd been made. No one had to say a word. Each of them knew it was time to run. Intense chase. A voice crackled through the intercom, warning of intruders in the facility, and within seconds the sound of boots pounding against the ground echoed through the halls. The base's security team was bearing down on them fast, along with alien enforcers whose loyalty to the government was a mystery that could wait until they survived this ordeal. "Move!" Riley growled, shoving Marcus forward. They sprinted down a long corridor, its harsh fluorescent lights making their shadows look stretched and monstrous. Behind them, heavily armed guards charged, accompanied by strange figures. Tall, silver-skinned beings with elongated limbs and glowing eyes, moving with an eerie, unnatural speed. Nina's heart hammered as she glanced over her shoulder, catching a glimpse of the pursuing aliens. What the hell are those things? "Not the time!" Tom snapped, ducking as bullets ricocheted off the walls, sparking against metal surfaces. "Just keep moving!" Riley led the group, his training kicking in as he calculated the best way out. He spotted a narrow utility corridor to the left and gestured toward it. "There! Go! Escape plan." They plunged into the tight passage, running single file with Marcus bringing up the rear. He clutched a small device, his fingers frantically tapping as he attempted to secure and upload the precious data they'd risked everything to obtain. "We're not going to make it to the exit," Nina called out, her breath coming in gasps. Riley, quick on his feet, spotted a set of access panels overhead. "We're not going to the exit," he replied, gritting his teeth. "We're going up." He motioned for Marcus, who quickly hacked the lock on the panel. The hatch opened with a hiss, revealing a maintenance ladder leading up into the darkness. "Go!" Marcus yelled, gesturing everyone ahead of him. "I'll keep them busy and upload this data." Tom gave him a hard look. "We're not leaving you here. Just go." Marcus's voice was filled with urgency. With a reluctant nod, Tom led the climb, with Nina following close behind. As the others climbed, Marcus stayed by the ladder, typing furiously on his device as he kept uploading files to an off-site server. The hum of alien enforcers' footsteps grew louder, and just as they rounded the corner, Marcus hurled a flash grenade into their midst. The explosion of light and sound momentarily stunned their pursuers, buying the team precious seconds to climb higher. Above them, the air grew thick and warm as they emerged into a maze of pipes and ventilation ducts. "This way!" Riley barked, taking the lead. He used his knowledge of facilities like this one to navigate the labyrinthine ducts, twisting and turning through tight spaces as their pursuers scrambled below. Narrow escapes. But the guards and aliens below weren't giving up. Their shouts echoed through the ductwork, mingling with the clang of boots and the hiss of strange alien whispers. Tom could feel the adrenaline pounding in his ears as he squeezed through a narrow duct, his body scraping against metal, every sense on high alert. They slid down a steep vent and landed hard on a lower platform. From here, they could see a window of opportunity, a side exit that would take them to the base's perimeter. "Almost there," Marcus muttered, checking his device one last time. "Data's secure. It's uploading now." But just as relief started to wash over them, they heard the familiar buzz of alien technology. Two alien enforcers phased through the walls, their ghostly forms solidifying as they moved to block the exit. Their skin was metallic and reflective, rippling with iridescent colors that shimmered in the low light. Each one moved with the grace of a predator, their elongated limbs bending in unnatural ways. Riley didn't hesitate. He charged at the nearest alien, ducking under a sweeping arm as he delivered a hard jab to its torso. The alien recoiled, its body shuddering, but it quickly regained composure, retaliating with lightning speed. Riley barely dodged the next blow, grunting as the alien's arm grazed him, leaving a shallow gash. Meanwhile, Nina held her own against the second alien. She used her baton to block its attacks, maneuvering with skill and agility honed from years of law enforcement. Despite its strength, the alien's movements were methodical, almost predictable, and Nina quickly exploited its weak spots. Tom lunged at one of the guards, wresting a weapon from his grasp. He aimed and fired, the shot reverberating through the air as the guard fell to the ground. With one final burst of energy, Riley knocked out his opponent and yelled, "Go now!" The team bolted through the exit, emerging into the night air just as the alarms continued to wail behind them. Their lungs burned from exertion, and their bodies ached from the bruises and scrapes they'd collected during the escape. But they didn't stop. They sprinted into the dense woods surrounding the facility, disappearing into the darkness, securing the evidence. Once they were a safe distance away, Marcus paused, bending over as he caught his breath. "Data's fully uploaded. We got it all." The weight of the victory settled over them. They had not only survived the terrifying chase, but managed to upload all the evidence they needed. The information was safe, and the world would soon know the truth about the aliens, the government's alliance, and the horrifying plans hidden beneath the surface. Tom clapped Marcus on the shoulder, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Good job. You saved us all, Marcus." Nina gave a weary nod. "Now the real battle begins. This evidence will change everything." Riley surveyed their surroundings, his expression a mix of relief and vigilance. "We may be out, but they'll be coming for us. We need to stay low, keep moving, and plan our next steps." As they melted back into the shadows of the forest, their minds were already racing ahead, envisioning the inevitable fallout, the revelations that would send shockwaves through the world, and the fierce opposition they would face. But for now, they had won a critical victory. They had struck the first blow in a war for the truth, a war that had only just begun. Chapter 7. The Shocking Twist. Project Celestial Veil's Real Purpose. The team sat in a dimly lit, abandoned warehouse far from the alien base. Shadows danced across the walls as the only light came from the glow of Marcus's laptop screen. Exhaustion clung to each of them, but adrenaline kept them alert, watching as Marcus hunched over his device, typing furiously. "We went through hell for this data," Riley muttered, breaking the silence. "It better be worth it." Marcus didn't look up. "If what I'm seeing is real, you'll wish it wasn't." Tom's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Marcus took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "Project Celestial Veil, it's not just about contact. It's about replacement." He turned the laptop to face the others. The data he'd decoded displayed reams of information, rows of alien symbols mixed with English translations, interspersed with technical diagrams and temperature models for Earth. "Replacement? Explain," Nina demanded, her voice tight. Marcus clicked a tab, revealing an ominous section labeled Phase 2, Full Integration Protocol. The government hasn't just made contact with aliens, they've allied with an alien faction. These aliens have a long-term plan. Their species is in danger on their own planet, and they've been searching for a new home, a new world to colonize. Earth isn't just a meeting ground, it's their new target. The others stared in horrified silence as Marcus continued. "They call it seeding," he said. "The replacements we've seen. That was just Phase 1, testing the waters, so to speak. Phase 2 is far worse. They're planning full integration. The horrifying plan for humanity." Nina leaned forward, eyes wide with disbelief. "Integration? What does that mean for us? Are they planning to coexist?" Marcus's face was grim. They don't see humans as permanent. To them, we're just a transition, a stepping stone to prepare Earth for their kind. He tapped another document. A model appeared, showing Earth's atmosphere and climate overlaid with alien symbols. As they watched, the data morphed, showing drastic shifts in temperature, oxygen levels, and other environmental markers. "They're altering our climate," Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. "Gradually, but inevitably. They want Earth to become more like their homeworld, a place where they can thrive, and we can't." Tom's mouth dropped open. "You mean they're going to wipe us out?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Not directly, but through manipulation. They're planning to transform Earth into a version of their own world. It's a climate hostile to human life, but perfect for them. A suffocating silence filled the room as the magnitude of what they'd uncovered settled over the group. They had thought this was a covert government experiment, perhaps even a questionable alliance with alien visitors, but they hadn't expected this. A meticulously calculated slow-motion extermination. Nina's fists clenched. We're just placeholders to them? Temporary tenants they plan to evict? Riley's expression was dark, his jaw clenched as he absorbed the news. And the government's going along with this? They're just sacrificing humanity? Marcus shook his head. Not everyone in the government is aware. This project is controlled by a shadow faction, high-level officials, secret operations, people who aren't accountable to anyone. They believe that aligning with these aliens is the only way to secure their own power. He opened a final document labeled Population Management and Control. They've even developed a plan to manage human populations as they continue with Project Celestial Veil. The idea is to keep us docile and manageable while they terraform Earth to match the alien homeworld. Riley's face hardened. And the replacements we saw earlier, those were just a test run? Exactly, Marcus said, nodding. Those early replacements were simply the first wave. They used them to observe and learn, to study how best to introduce their species and adapt to our society. But full integration, that means entire communities slowly replaced, entire landscapes transformed, and human life phased out. The weight of this realization hit them all. Earth, the home they'd fought so hard to protect, was becoming a stranger under their feet, subtly reshaped to host an invading species under the guise of cooperation. A moment of resolve. Tom broke the silence, his voice low and determined. We can't just sit here, people need to know. Marcus nodded. I've already uploaded part of the data to an off-site server, but we need to release this to the world. If the public learns the truth, it might be enough to force the hand of those in power. Nina's face was set in grim resolve. This isn't just about aliens. This is a fight for our existence, for our right to live on this planet. Riley squared his shoulders. Then we take this fight to them. We find the people responsible, we expose every secret, and we rally the world to stop them. Because if we don't, there won't be a world left for us. Marcus looked around the room, his gaze meeting each of theirs in turn. They were a small team, a ragtag group who had stumbled into a conspiracy beyond anything they'd imagined. But they had the truth on their side, and as long as they breathed, they wouldn't let Project Celestial Veil remain in the shadows. Let's end this, Marcus said, his voice filled with determination. In that moment, they were united by a single purpose: to save humanity from an unimaginable fate. The truth was out, and now it was a race against time to make sure it reached every corner of the world before the plan could unfold. Chapter 8. Rallying for the Ultimate Stand. The team's warehouse hideout buzzed with an urgency that bordered on desperation. Marcus's laptop was their window to the world, and he wasn't wasting a second. Every keystroke was another message, another file sent to trusted contacts who could help bring the conspiracy to light. Across the room, Tom paced, phone in hand, talking with old friends and former colleagues he knew he could trust. Listen, Tom said into the phone, his voice low but firm. We're talking about nothing short of the end of humanity. You need to spread this. Get it into the right hands. We need every voice, every ally we can find. On Marcus's screen, social media posts started to light up. The hashtag #SaveEarthNow was spreading like wildfire. Within hours, activist groups, tech insiders, and underground networks from coast to coast were sharing the story. Videos of whistleblowers recounting their experiences with Project Celestial Veil went viral. The internet became a battlefield, and the people were rising. Good job, Marcus, Tom said, patting his friend on the shoulder. "But we're not done yet." Riley nodded, rolling his shoulders as he readied his gear. "We've rallied them. Now it's time to hit them where it hurts." The final confrontation. As dusk turned to darkness, the team prepared for their assault. Nina had managed to pull a few strings with her old contacts, and Riley had spent hours mapping out the base's weaknesses. They were ready. The plan was simple and brutal. Infiltrate the base, destroy the alien technology, and cripple the government's alliance with their alien overlords once and for all. This was the moment they'd been building toward, the ultimate showdown. Outside the base, they were greeted by an unexpected sight. Hundreds of local militia members and ordinary citizens had gathered, their faces illuminated by flashlights and phone screens. These were the people who'd heard the team's message and answered the call. Tom addressed the crowd, his voice steady but urgent. "We're standing on the front lines of humanity's last chance. Together, we're stronger than anything they can throw at us. Let's show them what it means to fight for our world." The crowd erupted in cheers, and the militia leaders started organizing their men. With each passing second, the sense of unity grew, binding them together in a shared mission. The epic battle. The first explosion shattered the silence of the night, signaling the start of the assault. Chaos erupted as government forces rushed to respond, but the sheer number of resistors caught them off guard. Soldiers and agents tried to regroup, but waves of militia members pushed forward, relentlessly breaking through the outer defenses. In the middle of the fray, the team moved with a practiced precision. Riley led the way, taking down guards with brutal efficiency, while Marcus hacked into security systems to disable surveillance and lock doors behind them, cutting off enemy reinforcements. Nina used her connections to monitor enemy movements, directing their allies through every twist and turn of the labyrinthine base. As they moved deeper, the alien enforcers emerged. These beings, sleek and unnervingly agile, had been brought in as the government's secret weapon. Clad in advanced armor and wielding unfamiliar weaponry, they were formidable foes. But the team and the militias fought back, using whatever weapons and improvised tactics they had. Explosions echoed down the hallways, and smoke filled the air. The base became a war zone, each corridor a gauntlet as the two forces clashed. The alien enforcers were ruthless, but they hadn't anticipated the relentless drive of humanity fighting for survival. A betrayal turned ally. The team reached the heart of the base, the control room housing the alien technology. Just as they prepared to plant the charges, they were confronted by Dr. Hayes, the scientist who had once been at the center of Project Celestial Veil. She stood there, an inscrutable look on her face as she blocked their way. Riley raised his weapon, but Dr. Hayes held up her hands. "Wait," she said, her voice barely audible over the distant sounds of gunfire and explosions. "Why should we trust you?" Nina demanded, her eyes narrowed. Dr. Hayes took a deep breath, her face contorted with guilt. "Because I was wrong. I thought the Alliance was our best chance for survival, that the aliens would help us. But after seeing their true intentions, I can't be part of it anymore. I want to help you." Tom exchanged a skeptical glance with the others. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" Dr. Hayes looked him dead in the eyes. "Because I'm giving you this." She held out a key card. "It'll get you into the core chamber. You'll be able to destroy the entire system from there. It's the only way to ensure the project is dead." Reluctantly, Tom took the key card, and Dr. Hayes stepped aside. "Good luck," she whispered as they passed, her gaze filled with regret. The final push. With the keycard in hand, the team raced toward the core chamber, weaving through gunfire and dodging alien enforcers. They could feel the adrenaline pumping as they approached the final room, the epicenter of Project Celestial Veil. Once inside, Marcus and Tom worked quickly, setting charges around the alien technology, massive humming devices that pulsed with an otherworldly glow. The strange machinery looked like something out of a nightmare, a fusion of organic and mechanical components that seemed almost alive. "Hurry up!" Riley shouted, keeping watch at the door as more guards and aliens approached. The countdown on the charges ticked down as Tom secured the last one. The team sprinted from the room, weaving through the chaos and making their way back to the surface. Just as they reached the outer perimeter, a thunderous explosion shook the ground, illuminating the night sky as the core chamber went up in flames. The government forces and aliens were thrown into disarray as the blast reverberated through the base. Some tried to mount a last defense, but the militia forces surged forward, overwhelming the remaining guards and driving them back. The team finally regrouped outside, breathing heavily, covered in dust and grime, but victorious. The base was in ruins, the Alliance shattered, and the alien technology destroyed. A moment of triumph and uncertainty. As dawn broke, the battered but triumphant militia members and activists gathered around the team, cheering and hugging each other. They had won a hard-fought battle, but the weight of what they'd accomplished left them somber. They had struck a blow for humanity, but they knew this wasn't the end. Nina looked at Tom, her face lined with exhaustion but resolute. "We stopped them here, but they might try again. We have to stay vigilant." Tom nodded. "We will. But we've sent a message they won't forget. Earth is ours, and we won't let anyone take it from us." The people around them cheered, their spirits unbroken despite the trials they'd faced. The team stood together, a quiet unity binding them as they looked toward an uncertain future. For now, they had won. They had fought back against the darkness, and in that victory, they had found hope. The war wasn't over, but they had made their stand, and with every heart they had rallied to their side. They had proven one thing above all: humanity would not go quietly. Chapter 9. A lasting victory with a hidden price. The sun rose over the smoldering remains of the facility, casting eerie shadows over twisted metal and shattered concrete. Smoke still lingered in the air, and the acrid smell of destruction clung to the scene, a silent testament to the battle that had taken place just hours before. The base was gone, reduced to ruins, and with it, the alien technology that had threatened humanity's survival. But for the team, victory came with a heavy price. As the first responders and curious onlookers began to gather at a distance, the media's cameras captured everything. Despite government agents' attempts to block access, the story was already out, and there was no containing it. The destruction of the facility had uncovered something undeniable: a massive, alien mechanism, now lying half-buried in the debris. The strange, iridescent metal shimmered unnaturally under the morning sun, unlike anything known on Earth. Within hours, images of the wreckage had flooded social media, making headlines worldwide. Speculations ran wild, but the truth was there in plain sight. The world could no longer ignore what had been hidden in the shadows for so long. The confirmation governments around the globe scrambled to respond, each trying to manage the fallout of the revelation. Press conferences were hastily organized as officials attempted to provide explanations, but the carefully constructed facade of denial crumbled under the weight of indisputable evidence. One by one, world leaders were forced to acknowledge the truth. Humanity was not alone, and alliances with extraterrestrial forces had indeed been formed by powerful factions within the government. As the team watched the news from a hidden location, Marcus shook his head, a slight smile of grim satisfaction on his face. "They can't hide it anymore. We did it." Riley, lying on a makeshift cot with his shoulder wrapped in bloody bandages, gave a weary nod. "Yeah, but at what cost?" His face was pale, and every movement betrayed the pain he was enduring. During the last moments of the battle, he'd taken a hit meant for Nina, a wound deep enough that he had almost been left behind. It was only Nina's quick thinking and Tom's support that had dragged him out of the base before the final blast. Nina looked at Riley, guilt and worry mingling in her expression. She hadn't let go of his hand since they'd reached their hiding place. "You shouldn't have done that, Riley," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I would have made it. You didn't have to risk yourself." Riley forced a weak smile. "And let you miss out on seeing the aftermath? Not a chance." The bittersweet victory. Though they had succeeded, the toll was etched on each of their faces. Tom and Marcus sat nearby, silent and contemplative, each lost in their own thoughts. The world knew the truth now, but victory felt hollow. They had exposed the conspiracy, destroyed the facility, and severed the government's alliance with the aliens. Yet each of them knew they had sacrificed more than they'd ever anticipated. As they sat in somber silence, Nina made an announcement. "I'm leaving," she said softly, her voice steady despite the sadness in her eyes. The others looked up, startled. "What?" Marcus asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. Nina took a deep breath. "I have to disappear. They'll be after us, especially me. I know too much. I've seen too much. And now that the government's hand has been forced, they'll want to erase any trace of the truth. I can't stay and risk dragging you all down with me." Tom clenched his fists, frustration and understanding warring in his expression. "So that's it? You're just going to vanish?" Nina looked at each of them, her gaze lingering on Riley, who gave her a pained smile. "You all have a chance to start over, to rebuild. But for me, I've burned every bridge. My old life, my connections, they're all compromised. If I stay, it's a death sentence." The silence that followed was heavy, but they all knew she was right. She had been the team's insider, the one with access to secrets even the government's top officials didn't fully understand. And now, her knowledge made her a target. They couldn't protect her, not indefinitely. A farewell and new resolve. Riley managed to sit up, grimacing through the pain as he looked at Nina. "Just promise you'll stay safe, all right?" She smiled, a faint glimmer of her old self shining through. "I'll do my best. But I know how to disappear. They'll never find me." With a final embrace and whispered farewells, Nina slipped away into the early morning light, her silhouette fading as she disappeared into the world beyond. She would always be part of them. But now she was gone, a ghost haunting the fringes of their lives. Looking toward tomorrow. Tom and Marcus helped Riley up, supporting him as they prepared to leave. The world they were returning to was forever changed, and their victory, though bittersweet, was a beacon of hope. They had fought for the truth, for humanity's right to know what was being hidden. As they left their hiding place, the weight of their journey settled on them. They had won, but each of them bore scars, some physical, others emotional. The revelation had shattered the veil, exposing humanity to a reality it had never imagined. And though the road ahead was uncertain, they knew they had done the right thing. In the days that followed, protests erupted across the globe, people demanding accountability, seeking answers. The team watched from the sidelines, their identities hidden, but their legacy left in the hearts of those who believed in their cause. They had sparked a movement, ignited a fire that would burn in the hearts of countless others. For Riley, Tom, and Marcus, the future was uncharted, but they knew one thing for certain. They would remain vigilant, ready to protect humanity from the shadows. Because now, more than ever, they understood that the battle for truth was only beginning. And somewhere, in a quiet, unseen corner of the world, Nina watched as her friend's efforts blossomed into something larger than any of them. She was gone, but her spirit was with them, guiding them as they continued to guard a world forever changed.
Chapter 10. Epilogue. A shadow still lingers. In the wake of their harrowing journey, each member of the team returned to a life forever marked by the battle they had fought, and the truths they could never unsee. Victory had been theirs, but the wounds ran deep, and their understanding of the world had irrevocably shifted. There was no going back. Tom's new mission. For Tom, the fight had stripped away any illusion of safety or comfort. Journalism had once been his passion, a career he cherished for its ability to expose and enlighten. But now it felt limiting. The world was filled with secrets, hidden webs of power that extended far beyond what a single article or exposé could capture. Driven by the need to protect the truth, Tom left his position and quietly formed a network of investigators, informants, and ex-operatives who shared his vision. Their goal was simple yet ambitious: to uncover and dismantle hidden threats to humanity, wherever they lurked. As he walked the bustling streets of New York City, blending seamlessly into the crowd, Tom realized that he had become a different person. Gone were the days of deadlines and newsroom camaraderie. He was part of something larger now, a mission that felt like both a burden and a calling. For Tom, there would be no rest, only vigilance. Marcus, a catalyst for change. Halfway across the globe, Marcus had become a figure of global influence. What had started as a personal quest for justice had turned him into a symbol of resistance. News channels and social media were filled with images of him speaking to crowds, igniting a movement that refused to let governments conceal the truth. He organized rallies, workshops, and gatherings across continents, inspiring local activists to establish their own watchdog networks. Transparency, freedom, unity, he would say to roaring crowds, his voice resonating with conviction. We must hold those in power accountable. This planet is our home, and it belongs to all of us, not to secret agendas or hidden factions. With his tireless efforts, Marcus brought people together. Governments were forced to implement new policies for oversight, and international coalitions began forming with one goal: to ensure that no hidden force could again manipulate humanity from the shadows. Marcus had become more than an activist. He was a global icon, a symbol of a new era where truth was paramount, a world still on edge. Despite their success, the world was left with a lingering unease. For the first time, humanity knew that extraterrestrial contact was real, and that powerful factions had been prepared to trade Earth's future for hidden alliances. The alien wreckage, now guarded under layers of security, remained a grim reminder of what had almost transpired. Scientists, politicians, and citizens alike grappled with the implications of what had been uncovered, yet many feared there was still much more lurking beneath the surface. A new threat emerges. One evening, as Tom prepared for bed in his modest apartment, his phone buzzed with a strange notification. There was no sender, no number, only a string of coordinates. Frowning, he opened a secure map on his laptop and entered the coordinates, watching as they narrowed down to a location in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. The screen pulsed as he zoomed in, revealing nothing but an endless expanse of water. Then a message appeared on the screen, typed in real time by an unseen source. There is another faction, one far more concealed than those you have encountered. They have been watching, waiting. The war is far from over. Come if you dare, but know that once you arrive, there will be no turning back. Tom's heart raced as he stared at the message, his mind whirling with possibilities. The coordinates, the warning. It was all too familiar. He had learned to recognize the signs of someone trying to lead him deeper into the shadows. And yet, he felt an undeniable pull, a curiosity he couldn't ignore. For all he had sacrificed, for all he had seen, He knew he couldn't ignore a threat, especially one that was willing to hide in such depths. Taking a deep breath, Tom closed his laptop and began packing. There was no need to alert the others just yet. He would investigate first, make sure the threat was real. As he slid his bag over his shoulder and took a final look around his apartment, he knew he might not return. The final reflection. Outside, the city lights stretched endlessly, glittering like stars against the dark night. Somewhere out there, hidden forces still operated, moving silently beneath the world's surface. They had defeated one enemy, but they had merely scratched the surface. The battle for truth and freedom was only beginning, and Tom, Marcus, and Nina, wherever she was, were bound to that fight, forever vigilant. With one last glance at the sky, Tom took a step forward, disappearing into the night. He knew that the road ahead would be treacherous, filled with dangers they couldn't yet imagine. But he also knew one thing with unwavering certainty. They would be ready, whatever shadows came next. And thus, the war for humanity's freedom and truth continued. A war with no end in sight.
This has been an Fall the Haters audio production.